I am so excited for this.
FAE-01.
After trying the SE4, I am really curious to see how different this is.
Let's dive in.
So for those who can't read, this is 2021 limited release.
The first one of two.
First one of two, yes. 110.6 proof, so right around where the SE4 was, within a proof point.
So, it's similar to SE4 PR5 in that there's not a whole lot of spice on the nose.
Right. It's very like a bourbon-y sweetness.
Yeah, like maple. I get maple.
Yeah, I get maple.
A little bit of Luxardo cherry. People say pipe tobacco, and I actually do get like a like an aromatic sweet pipe tobacco, like not like a cigar tobacco, but like a really, really sweet aromatic pipe tobacco. And then like
the cherry's becoming more and more prevalent.
A little bit, yeah. It has a little bit of that distinct Maker's cherry. But then I also smell like really sweet wood, like I don't want to say like fresh cut oak, but like I would say almost like a maple wood. Like maple, like
yeah, I can see that. Yeah,
like the way the maple is mixing with the wood. Like it's just a sweet wood smell. I don't know how else to describe it really.
Well, let's try it. Oh yeah, I like that.
It's distinctly less sweet than the PR4 was.
Tobacco.
Oh yeah, there's a ton of tobacco on this.
There's definitely, again, that sort of sweet oak. It translates pretty well.
There's a little bit of like dried fruit. It doesn't translate into cherry in the mouth. It translates into like figs and prunes.
Or like almost raisiny.
A little bit raisiny. I think that that's kind of the tobacco because some like chewing tobacco does taste raisiny.
Right.
Like good old Redmonds. Good old Redmonds.
It still has a little bit of that sweetness. I'm still getting a little bit of that signature Maker's Mark cherry, but it's very much
more on the nose.
More on the nose. It's still a little bit on the palate, but it's more so again the sort of fig, dried fruits, almost dried apricot at times.
And I'm still getting maple. I don't get brown sugar on this. I do get straight
any brown sugar at all.
I get straight maple. But yeah,
almost like instead of oak, it's like a maple wood.
A little bit, yeah. Like you could tell me that this was like run through like or finished with like maple wood staves, and I would believe it.
Right, because they finished it with 10 virgin toasted American oak staves.
Yeah, it's like half of it was toasted and the other half was raw, which they haven't done before. So I mean, you could tell me that they finished this with maple staves, and I would definitely believe it.
Yeah. You can definitely tell that sort of, all those kind of wood flavors and the drier notes to it are definitely coming from the virgin oak.
Yeah.
But
this is a lot more balanced too than the SE4 was. Like the SE4 PR5 was sweeter and it definitely had more vanilla and caramel.
It was more robust.
It had more vanilla and caramel because that's what they designed it to do, but it also had way more spice.
Right.
This is not that spicy at all.
Right, it's not. It has spicy notes, but it's not spicy. It has all the oak. It has...
This may actually be the least spicy and least hot bottle I've ever tasted from Makers.
I might have to agree.
Like the other thing too about this one is that there is no heat to it at all, which usually there's heat on it.
The thing that comes closest, believe it or not, is regular Maker's cask, I think.
Actually, yeah, like...
Because a lot of the private selects, like, they still have some of that signature Maker spice to it.
Yeah.
And at least more so than this or the cask does.
Yeah, like the cask strength was like probably the other thing that was the least hot, surprisingly. And I don't know if you attribute that to the fact that this is like a batch product and the store picks are basically single barrels, which definitely adds another element of variation, but...
Right. Because you can pick the exact same private select in a different year and it'll still taste different.
Yeah, it'll taste a little bit different just because they're single barrels, which is like, I think the only thing that Makers is going to do different where it's not like, here's our 90 proof, 101 and cask strength. They're all the same whiskey and they're made to taste. But this is going to taste different because it's a single barrel. I think that's the only difference that they're going to do. Because they found their thing that like differentiates it from like and lets them make new products instead of just releasing, okay, we released a bottle and bond. Oh, we released a 9-year or 6-year, 7-year, whatever.
I actually really appreciate that they take a completely different approach and don't go for age statements and don't go for what everyone else goes for, aside from cast strengths.
Which is why I personally like small batch better than single barrels, because there's so much more ability to manipulate it to make it taste how you want it to taste, and they're just typically more complex, in my opinion.
Single barrels they're not meant to be. I mean, a lot of them are just like, oh, this is good enough to have on its own, but that's going to lead to variation. That's going to lead to you liking some and not others in a lot of distilleries. I mean, there's some that can be very consistent.
Yeah.
Four Roses single barrel tends to be more on the consistent side, in my opinion.
And I think...
Which is interesting considering how many different yeast strains and mash bills they have.
Well, I think that the thing about that with Four Roses is the fact that they only have, 4 whiskeys, and they have, a dirt cheap shit bottom shelf whiskey, like the yellow label. It's decent, but yeah, they're basically taking all the barrels that they're not big fans of, and they're not this shouldn't be put towards something good. Let's just put it into that batch. And the slightly better stuff they put in the small batch, because the small batch is slightly better.
Because then their premium small batch is a small batch select. That's where that's where they're going for. We want to fine tune this to be exactly what we want.
Right.
And then the single barrel is, this is good enough to sell on its own, and we don't want to put it in a small batch because it doesn't fit our profile, but it's good enough to be on its own.
And then they have the limited edition ones, which are basically like the Buffalo Trace Antique for Four Roses.
But back to the FAE.
Yeah, makers. I
think they hit the nail on the head with this one.
I can never say enough good things about Maker's Mark. They're, again, one of my top 2 favorite
If I'm not
distilleries.
lazy with editing, I'll put a picture of my Maker's Mark shelf right here. You know my feelings of Maker's Mark, as they are my favorite distillery, and I don't see that ever changing with the route they're taking.
I just cannot. I still can't decide between whether I like Knob Creek or Maker's better. They're just 2 totally different whiskeys.
Oh, it's one of those ones where I don't think I could pick. It's like me with this in 1792. I like them for very different reasons. They do very different products. And they're sought after for very different reasons.
Right. Yeah, I don't know, man. I really don't know. I love them both so much, but Maker's, is definitely up there for one of my favorite distilleries.
It's in a lot of people's top 5s, even if they don't go hunting for it, just because they get consistency in the regular products, and they get so much variety that you never know what you're going to get, but you know you're going to like it.
And that's the thing, too, is there's, the private selects are probably one of the best,
have you had a private select you haven't liked?
No. And I don't think I ever will.
You have one where you're like, oh, this isn't my favorite, but you never have one where you're like, I shouldn't have bought this. I'm convinced it's not possible.
I don't think it is.
If you like Makers, I don't think it's possible.
Because, they do a really consistent job, and then they're also picking, prime barrels for these private selects that, it's really hard to
and the finishing and all different kinds of... with all different
Oh, yeah, those play a huge part.
We've proven by trying some of these that Cuvée can add so much...
It adds
so
caramel,
much mouthfeel to it.
Yeah, it adds viscosity, brown sugar, and caramel.
And the mocha one adds a sort of
chocolatey
coffee kind of note, which I'm sad they're retiring it, but they're replacing it with something similar. I read it is similar, but it has more complexity and more room for manipulation. Is what I saw.
I heard from somebody who so whenever they did the community badge thing, during the press conference or whatever for it. One of the guys, representatives from Maker's Mark, point blank said, "We're retiring this stave, not because we don't like it, but because people are using it too much." Literally, a lot of the private selects were, picking 5 mocha staves and then building around it. And because of that, I think that they're going to bring it back, and they're going to do something else with it and put it in, a permanent product. The same way they did with 46. So we might see another, whiskey coming out.
So we could see, a maker... Maker's Mocha, not to call it that, but something where that's the basis of the product, and they you don't have much control of it. They're making what they want to make with it.
Yeah, I think we would potentially see a Maker's 46 situation where 46 was their break into this to test the waters with stave finishes, and it was phenomenal. It was a beautiful idea. and then they took it and made a cast strength out of it, and then they did the private select line.
And now they're seeing that they have another one that could break out on its own.
I think we might see. I think it might be something like Maker's Mark FM or something like that. Mm-hmm. Like I think that's probably what we would see. And I am hoping that they do that because Makers.
I need to end this on a reference because of what you just said. It's Maker's Mark.
God damn it.